So about a year ago, I came out with a video called The Honest Truth about covered call ETFs. Pretty popular video, got 50,000 views. The general premise, and you could check it out, but the general premise of this video is that when you're doing covered calls on something, most likely down the line, long term, you're gonna underperform that asset, right? If you have an S&P 500 ETF, then you have an S&P 500 ETF with covered calls. Most likely the one with the covered calls is going to underperform for two main reasons. They have higher fees and the markets go up over time, and covered calls means you're capping your upside, you're limiting your upside, you're trading it for lower volatility and income. Now, of course, I'm talking about things that are unleveraged in Canada. I'm not focusing on Canada in this video at all. But in Canada, we have covered call ETFs that have 25% leverage, and those have approximately the same, if not slightly better performance, right? But that's not what I want to talk about. 8 months ago, I came out with a video called QDTE and XDTE, and I'm even going to put the TSPY ETF in that category as well, are beating QQQ and IVV. So QDTE, Nasdaq 100, covered call ETF that uses 0 DTE options. XDTE, same thing, but S&P 500. You also have TSPY from Top Alpha, who I recently had on the channel. He was also beating, or his ETF was also beating IVV. And that's without leverage. So that's why I have shocking in the title. But now it's no longer the case. So I don't want to this video just to be about bad news, but I want to try to figure out and tell you why, and I pretty much think I figured it out. So if you do XDTE, which is the Roundhill S&P 500 covered call ETF versus VU or IVV or whatever S&P 500 SPY, you'll see that it was outperforming, and you could even see XDTE, the graph here. You see the black is XDTE. Even here, which is not even a month and a half ago, I believe, it was outperforming, but now there's a big underperformance. You see that now. Same thing with TSPY, I believe. Let's just do TSPY. We'll stick with the S&P. If we do TSPY versus VOO, and by the way, for the record, I'm filming this on May the 13th, so that's why you have the dates until, well, actually, could I change it to May the 13th? Yeah, well, it's going to select May 12th because May 13th is not done yet, so that makes sense. You see TSPY was beating VU as well. Look at the black line. That's TSPY, was beating the S&P 500. No leverage, guys. What happened? Now it's underperforming. Same type of deal with QDTE, the Nasdaq one, right? The Nasdaq 100 0 DTE covered call ETF from Roundhill. It was beating QQQ very comfortably. Again, you see the same kind of story. Black line is QDTE, beating QQQ. Amazing. Not anymore. So what happened, guys? What the hell happened? Well, April 9th happened. So if you remember correctly, not that long ago, April 9th, I think Trump announced a pause on the China tariffs, and the stock market in one day jumped big time. S&P up 9.5%, Nasdaq 12% in one day. I repeat, in one day. So this is the root cause, my opinion, but I'm pretty sure it's the root cause of why or when the 0 DTE ETFs all got killed. Why? Because they're doing a 1 day or a 0 DTE 24-hour covered call. So they limited, when you're doing a covered call, you're limiting your upside. If you're doing it in 1 day and that day is spectacular, you're missing out on a lot of that increase. So I wish I would have saved the screenshot. I actually had like IVV with all the 0 DT covered call ETFs and the percentages and went up. But if memory serves me right, because I'm not going to forget this, the S&P was up like 9.5%. The Nasdaq, like it says here, 11, 12. The 0 DTE covered call ETFs were all up between 3 and maybe 4%. So they missed out on 1 day like 6-7% of gain. And that really killed them, killed their performance or long-term performance, because they went from outperforming to now underperforming, like I just showed you. So this I don't think has ever happened before, guys. And maybe it'll never happen again. The stock market going up 9% in 1 day. That's absolutely insane. I don't think it ever happened. But this is something, if you own any of these 0DT covered call ETFs, this is something you need to be aware and think about. This is your worst nightmare. This is the worst nightmare if you own a 0DT covered call ETF, because you're capping your upside for one day. So if it goes up like crazy, and you know, we've had a lot of days recently where the stock market is up 2% or 3%, and the 0DTE ones are up 2%, 3%. So it seems like it's like way past 3 or 4%, I think, that will come into trouble. And that might never happen again. When the stock market that has a really, really, really good day, it's up typically 1, 2, 3, 3.5%. It's very rare it's higher than that in one day. But you have to keep in mind that this could happen again. And if it does happen again, and these covered call ETF providers don't have anything in place to mitigate it, it could fall further and further behind. Now, I'm not trying to scare you into, you know, if you have QDT or XDT or TSPY, you got to sell them and just go to the classic, to a more classic covered call strategy, which did not have this problem on that day. Obviously, they're not going to go up 9.5%, but they probably went up 8.5%, right? Because it's still a covered call ETF. So I'm not trying to scare you. I don't want to, you know, scare you if you own QDT or XDT or TSPY or iSPY. You know, there's a bunch of 0DTE ones, but I just wanted to make this video to, if you're like me and all of a sudden you've been tracking these performances and it's been doing really well, and now what the hell happened? Well, April 9th basically happened. So I want to give you, just in case you want to switch to a more classic or regular one, I'll give you some alternatives. Let's look at some. And again, I still think the 0DT strategy I think that works and makes sense. I think they're going to win more days than they'll lose. And I think TSPY or XDTE or QDTE, they might catch up in performance. I don't know how long it's going to take, but they do have a lot to catch up on, as you could see here. But I think they could do it. TSPY is a little bit less, has a little bit less to catch up on. You see that it's actually catching up nicely. But it might take a while for them to catch up in performance. But I think they could do it. But again, if there's another 8, 9, 10% plus day in one day, it's going to be trouble for them. So let's go over some just alternatives. Let's start with the Nasdaq 100. So if you own a QDTE, for example, I would personally look into QQQI. As far as I could see, it's actually it's performing the best. It is the best performing Nasdaq 100 covered call ETF from NEOS. It actually won an award, whatever that award is. But it has a very high yield as well, a very consistent 13, 14% yield as well. The Goldman Sachs, if you want one a little bit more basic, you have GPIC, which is about 10% yield typically. But if we do, for example, QQQI versus QQQ, the NEOS one, you see that it's very, very close. It's right there. So performance-wise, it hasn't missed a beat. It's only been around for about a year and a half, something like that. But you see that the performance is good. If you do QQQY, for example, versus QQQ, just a Nasdaq 100, it's doing really, really well. If we do versus QDTE, for example, you see that it's outperforming QDT big time. And it was really on that day. You could actually see it if you zoom in. You actually see the damage that they did. Where the regular covered call ETF recovered, this one, the QDT did not. It went up only slightly. So that is where it missed a lot of that upside. So these could be ones to consider. I strongly feel for QQQI if you're considering a NASDAQ one. For the S&P 500, of course, you have SPY, which is also from NEOS. It's the equivalent. And you have GPIX as well. This will give you about 8% yield, and the SPY will give you a very consistent 12% yield, very popular. But I think SPY, in terms of strategy, maybe, well, I'll just show you the numbers. SPY isn't doing as well as QQQI if you compare it to the index. So if you do, for example, SPY versus VOO, it's not like QQQI. It is underperforming fairly significantly, I would say. I think it's getting closer recently. But if you do SPY versus XDTE, you'll see that although it was lagging behind XDTE is in black, now SPY is actually beating it. But I think XDTE could, start taking it start overtaking SPY again. I'm just saying SPY is another option. GPIX is another option. For example, if you do SPY versus TSPY, you'll see that. Come on. So yeah, SPY is actually outperforming TSPY right now, but it's very, very close. But I think TSPY could eventually recover. So my personal opinion, guys, for the Nasdaq one, I think QQQI seems to be the undisputed king here. I'm not saying swap and sell your QDTE. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll recover. I think it can. It's a matter of time. But remember, it's going to be slow because it's winning only a little bit every day. But if we have another one-day humongous rally of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% plus, it's going to be in trouble again. In terms of the S&P 500, SPY is okay. GPIX is okay. I personally really would probably stick with TSPY if I had to. It's the same expense ratio as SPY. I think it's good and it's very consistent yield as well, about 14-15% yield. So if it was me, if I, for example, was American or I still had my RSPs, which I don't, to invest in the Nasdaq 100 and the S&P 500 or core positions, I would probably swap my Nasdaq 100 to QQQI just in case. But I think for the S&P 500, I would be comfortable in sticking with TSPY or XDTE. It seems to me like TSPY has a little bit of advantage over XDTE in terms of return. But of course, a lot of people really like the weekly dividends. So again, there's nothing wrong with mixing and matching, and it's okay to stick with XDTE if it's working for you. You really, really like the weekly income. I just want to make this video to show you, and because I was a bit surprised all of a sudden. I'm looking, and why is TSPY and XDTE and QDTE underperforming all of a sudden? Well, it's because of April 9th. Give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it if you found this video informative. Is there something you don't understand? Do you have any theories, any comments? Do you think XDTE, TSPY, and QDTE will eventually catch up? I think it's actually pretty likely that they will, unless there's another April 9th, which could be a disaster. So hopefully the video is informative for you. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.